The moment Adana stepped out of the enchantress salon, the city seemed to shift around her. Lagos was always full of distractions, blaring horns, street hawkers calling out, and people rushing to their next destination. But now, everything felt different. The moment she stepped onto the sidewalk, it turned. A woman in a designer dress, halfway into her car, froze mid-motion, her keys slipping from her fingers. A group of men at a roadside cafe stopped their conversation, their eyes trailing her, as if pulled by an unseen force. Even the traffic seemed to slow, as though the city itself had noticed her. At first, Adana was thrilled. She had always wanted to be noticed, to be admired, but as she walked down the street, a strange sensation crept over her. This wasn't ordinary attention. The way people looked at her was unnatural. They weren't just admiring her hair, they were afraid of it. She flipped her golden locks over her shoulder, dismissing the unease. It was probably just her imagination. Could something so beautiful be dangerous? Adana was used to being pretty. She had smooth, dark skin, sharp cheekbones, and a smile that could turn heads. But in Lagos, where beauty was a competition, being just pretty wasn't enough. She had tried everything: luxury skincare, waist-cinching dresses, expensive makeup, yet she remained invisible among the city's elite. Her Instagram page, filled with carefully curated selfies and glamorous poses, barely reached a few hundred likes. Meanwhile, girls with no special features were blowing up overnight. It wasn't fear. Scrolling through Instagram one night, she stumbled upon an account she had never seen before: the Enchantress Salon. It had barely any followers, yet the pictures were mesmerizing. Women with hair that shimmered like silk, eyes that seemed to hold an unnatural glow. They looked unreal, ethereal, unforgettable. A single post caught her attention. A beauty that no one will ever forget, a transformation beyond human reach. But be warned, every gift has a price. Adana scoffed. What's the worst that could happen? She booked an appointment immediately. That was her first mistake. Adana arrived at the Enchantress Salon 2 days later, expecting just another high-end beauty spot. Instead, she found something different. The salon was located on the top floor of a sleek modern building in Victoria Island. But unlike the bustling salons filled with chattering stylists and the scent of hair products, this place was eerily silent. No loud blow dryers, no customers gossiping under steamers, just soft instrumental music playing in the background. A woman in a sleek black dress greeted her at the door. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with high cheekbones, piercing green eyes, and skin that shimmered under the soft light. Her name tag simply read Madame Ose. "She must be Adana," the woman said, in a voice as smooth as honey. Adana hesitated. "How does she know my name?" "Come." Madame Ose gestured toward an elegant chair with a golden frame. "Sit, your transformation awaits." Adana glanced around. There were no other clients, no hairstylist in sight, just Madame Ose and a row of sleek mirrors reflecting the dim lighting. Something about the whole setup felt unnatural, but Adana had waited too long for this. She took a deep breath and sat. The moment Madame Ose's hands touched her scalp, a shiver ran down Adana's spine. The world around her blurred. Time lost meaning. It felt as if Madame Ose was weaving something into her very soul. She couldn't see what was happening, but she felt it, an energy coursing through her, something powerful, something alive. When Madame Ose finally stepped back and handed Adana a mirror, she gasped. Her hair was perfect. No, beyond perfect. It shimmered like woven gold, cascading down her back in waves so flawless they almost didn't look real. It was thick yet weightless, soft yet unbreakable. Even under the salon's dim lighting, it seemed to glow. People will never forget you now, Madame Ose said, watching Adana's reflection carefully. Adana barely had her. She was too mesmerized. She had never looked more beautiful in her life. How much? She asked eagerly. Madame Ose smiled. You have already paid. A chill ran down Adana's spine. What do you mean? You will understand soon enough. Adana blinked. Something about those words unsettled her, but before she could say anything else, Madame Ose gently guided her towards the door. Enjoy your beauty, she whispered, but remember, no gift comes without a price. Adana stepped out into the city, her heart racing. She had no idea that her nightmare had just begun. Adana stepped into the streets of Lagos, her new hair flowing like liquid gold, and immediately felt the world shift around her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was irresistible. A man walking past her tripped over his own feet, too distracted to watch where he was going. A couple at a cafe stopped mid-conversation, eyes locked on her as if they had forgotten their own lives. Her phone buzzed. Amaka, babe, what did you do to your hair? I'm screaming. Drop the plug, abeg. Another notification. An influencer with over 300,000 followers had commented on her Instagram post. Oh my god, I need this hair. Who is your stylist? Adana grinned. She was finally getting the attention she deserved. The perks came fast. A bouncer at a high-end club let her in without question, even offering her VIP seating. A boutique owner gifted her an expensive dress. Just because you are too beautiful to ignore, a rich businessman at an event insisted on paying for anything she wanted. Everywhere she went, she was treated like royalty. And yet, somewhere deep inside her, a small voice whispered, something is wrong. She ignored it. That night, as she lay in bed, scrolling through comments, a strange sensation tickled her scalp. She scratched absent-mindedly, then froze. Her hair had just moved. By itself, Adana snatched her hand away from her scalp, heart pounding. Had she just felt movement? She ran to the mirror, studying herself under the soft glow of her vanity lights. Her golden locks cascaded down her shoulders, sleek and flawless. She slowly reached out and tugged at a strand. It was normal, silky, soft, unmoving. She let out a shaky laugh. I'm just tired, that's all. Pushing the thought aside, she focused on her phone. Her Instagram had exploded overnight. 18,000 new followers, over 50 DM requests. Even a popular modeling agency had reached out. We love your unique beauty. Let's talk. Adana's excitement erased every strange thought. She wasn't cursed, she was winning. And she wasn't going to let paranoia ruin her moment. Adana's excitement erased every strange thought. The next day, Adana met up with her best friend Amaka at a rooftop restaurant. The moment she walked in, Amaka's jaw dropped. Babe, what kind of juju hair is this? Amaka half whispered, half shouted, grabbing a handful of Adana's hair. This is not normal. Adana rolled her eyes, laughing. Relax, it's just premium hair. Amaka's eyes stayed fixed on the strands in her hand, her expression slowly shifting from awe to something else, something like fear. She suddenly let go, her fingers trembling. It just felt like it moved. Adana's stomach twisted. She forced a laugh. You are imagining things, Jave. Stop acting like those superstitious people. But Amaka wasn't laughing. She leaned in, voice low. Adana, I don't think this hair is ordinary. For the first time, Adana felt a shiver crawl down her spine. She shook it off. Abeg, let's order. I'm starving. Adana tried to act normal. She took pictures, enjoyed expensive cocktails, and laughed with Amaka. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The way people looked at her felt unnatural, like they weren't just admiring her beauty, like they were under some kind of spell. And that night, as she lay in bed, scrolling through her new modeling offer, she felt it again, a slight movement in her hair. This time, it wasn't just a tickle. This time, it felt like something was breathing. Adana sat up in bed, heart pounding. That feeling, that wasn't normal. She turned on the bedside lamp and grabbed a handheld mirror, inspecting her hair. Everything looked the same, sleek, perfect. Maybe it's just in my head. She shook off the unease and climbed back into bed, but as she lay in the darkness, a new fear crept in. What if Amaka was right? She pulled the covers over her head, ignoring the tiny voice whispering in her mind. The next day, Adana decided she was done being paranoid. She was beautiful, she was getting noticed, and nothing was going to ruin that. She stepped out in a body-hugging dress, golden locks cascading down her back, and walked into one of the biggest malls in Lekki. And once again, Lagos froze around her. People stopped what they were doing. A little girl walking with her mother pointed at Adana and whispered something. The mother quickly grabbed the child's hand and hurried away. A group of young men stood near the escalator, staring, not in admiration, but in silent, wide-eyed shock. A sales girl inside the store Adana entered nearly dropped the stack of clothes in her hands, her mouth slightly open, as if seeing something she couldn't comprehend. Adana's confidence faltered. This wasn't normal admiration. She walked faster, avoiding eye contact. She grabbed the first dress she saw and went straight to the fitting room. The moment she locked the door, she exhaled deeply. What was going on? Shaking her head, she turned to the mirror to try on the dress, and that's when she saw it. For a split second, so fast that she almost thought she had imagined it. Her reflection didn't move in sync with her. It was just a fraction of a second, a tiny lag, but it was there. Adana froze, heart hammering. She lifted a hand. The reflection followed. No lag this time. She stepped closer, studying herself under the bright fitting room lights. Her hair shimmered like spun gold, perfect as ever. But for the first time, she noticed something. Her eyes, they looked darker. No, deeper, like there was something behind them, watching, waiting. A loud knock on the door made her jump. "Hello, ma'am. Are you okay in there?" The sales girl's voice came through. Adana cleared her throat, forcing a smile. "Yes, I'm fine." She quickly changed back into her clothes and left without buying anything. Her reflection followed in the mirrors as she walked past them, moving in perfect sync this time. But somehow, she felt like it was pretending. A presence in the dark. That night, Adana was restless. She tossed and turned, haunted by the events at the mall. Then, in the silence of her room, something brushed against her cheek, soft, slow, like fingers. Her breath itched. She shot up in bed, her hand flying to her face. Nothing was there, but when she looked down at her pillow, a single golden strand of hair lay curled on the white fabric. She picked it up, frowning. It felt warm, like it had been alive. Adana threw it on the floor and put the covers over her head. For the first time since getting the hair, she felt a deep, terrifying regret. The next evening, Adana invited Amaka over to her apartment. She needed someone normal around, someone who could pull her out of this strange paranoia. Amaka arrived in an oversized hoodie and leggings, her usual bubbly energy muted. "Babe, you good?" Adana asked, trying to act normal. Amaka sat on the couch, eyeing her carefully. "You tell me." Adana rolled her eyes. "If this is about my hair again, I beg." "Stand up," Amaka interrupted. Adana frowned. Why? Just stand. Confused, Adana got up. Amaka's eyes flickered to something behind her, and then her face twisted in pure horror. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. Amaka, what? Christ! Amaka screamed, pointing. Her entire body shook. You, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Your shadow. Adana's blood ran cold. She didn't want to look, but some terrible force made her. Slowly, she turned, and her stomach dropped. Her shadow, it wasn't her. It was moving differently. While she stood frozen, it was writhing. Hair crawled around it like living snakes, shifting, twisting, reaching. Amaka bolted for the door. Adana spun around. Wait, Amaka, but her best friend was already gone. The door slamming shut behind her. For the first time, Adana realized she was alone. Alone with something that wasn't just here, something that wanted her, something that might already have her. Adana stood in the middle of her apartment, shaking. The echo of Amaka's scream still rang in her ears. Her shadow had moved on its own. Her hair wasn't normal, and suddenly she knew she had to get it off. Now, she bolted into the bathroom, flicking on the lights. The brightness felt like a lifeline, pushing back the darkness pressing in around her. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the drawer and yanked a chunk of hair forward. Her hands shook violently as she positioned the blades. She snapped them shut. Snip! Nothing. The scissors bounced off the hair. Adana's breath itched. She pressed harder. The scissors wouldn't cut. It was like trying to cut steel wires. No. She threw the scissors and turned on the shower, drenching her head under the stream of hot water. Maybe if she washed it out. Maybe if she felt it tighten. The strands wrapped around her scalp like they were burrowing deeper. Her skin burned. Adana let out a choked scream, scratching at her head, clawing, pulling, but the hair wouldn't budge. It wasn't just attached to her anymore. It was part of her. She staggered back, panting, heart hammering. Then, slowly, she lifted her head and saw her reflection, and that's when she truly lost it. Because in the mirror, her lips were moving, but she wasn't speaking. The reflection was talking on its own, and it was smiling. The reflection spoke. Adana froze. Her own reflection stood smiling at her, lips curved in a way that didn't match her fear. Her chest heaved, her breath coming out in shaky gasp, and then she had it. At first, it was just a murmur, like 1,000 whispers at once, crawling under her skin. Her ears rang with it. She clamped her hands over her head. Stop! But it didn't stop. Instead, it got clearer. And then, the reflection's lips moved again, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. You don't belong to yourself anymore, Adana. Her stomach lurched. The voice was soft, teasing, like someone enjoying a private joke. Adana took a step back. No, you let me in. Her entire body broke out in chills. You wanted beauty. The smile in the mirror stretched wilder. Now you have it. Adana shook her head violently. No, I didn't ask for this. The reflection tilted its head, mocking her. Didn't you? And then its eyes darkened. You were willing to pay any price, weren't you? Adana's breath itched because deep down she remembered sitting in Madame Osse's shop, feeling the soft strands of the golden wig between her fingers, hearing the woman's voice. Are you ready to give anything? And she had said yes without asking what anything meant. A horrible realization gripped her chest. This wasn't just a hairstyle, it was a deal, a contract, and she had already signed it. Adana stumbled out of the bathroom. Her breath ragged. The whispers still clung to her ears, echoing even though she had left the mirror behind. You let me in. You were willing to pay any price. Her ears flew to her head, fingers digging into the hair. She had to get it off, but before she could even try again, her hand stopped. Her own fingers wouldn't move. Her breath caught. She tried again. Nothing. It was like her arm didn't belong to her anymore. A sharp shiver crawled down her spine, and then, slowly, smoothly, her frozen hand lifted on its own. She watched in horror as it moved against her will, fingers dragging through the golden strands like they were caressing it, like it was stroking her. A cold sweat broke out across her skin, and then a giggle, not hers, but it came from her own throat, soft, chilling, the sound of something else inside her enjoying itself. Adana's knees buckled. She slammed against the wall, gasping for breath. What was happening to her? She had to find Madame Ose now. She reached the shopping complex where the salon was located, barely stopping to catch her breath before she hurried up the stairs. But when she got there, she froze. The sign that once said Ose's Ear Haven was gone. The space where the shop used to be was empty, like it had never existed. Adana took a shaky step forward, her mouth dry. She pressed her hands against the glass door. Nothing. No chairs, no mirrors, no golden wigs, just an empty, dusty room. No, she whispered. No, this isn't possible. She had just been here days ago. She had sat in that chair, felt the hairdresser's hands on her scalp, and now nothing. A shiver ran through her. Then, looking for someone, Adana whipped around. An old woman sat on a stool nearby, peeling oranges. Her eyes, cloudy with age, watched Adana too closely. Madame Ose, Adana gasped. Where is she? The old woman let out a dry chuckle. Ah, you too? Adana's stomach tightened. What do you mean? The woman shrugged, tossing an orange peel to the ground. Many girls come here looking for her. They always come running, just like you. Adana's skin prickled. You know her? The woman sighed. Know her? She chuckled again, shaking her head. That woman isn't someone you find. She finds you. Adana's heart sank. Where is she now? The woman's smile faded. Gone. A sharp chill slammed into Adana's chest. Gone. Where? The woman turned her gaze to Adana's ear. Her expression darkened. You already know the answer to that. A fear takes over. Adana staggered back. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The old woman's words, she finds you, echoed in her head. What does that even mean? How can she be gone? She reached up, fingers tangling in the golden strands as panic swelled inside her. I need to take this thing off. Her fingers grasped the root of the wig, yanking hard, but the second she pulled, her entire body seized. A sharp electric jolt shot down her spine. Her arms jerked backward against her will. She gasped. Her body felt like a marionette controlled by invisible strings, and then her head tilted to the side, slowly, deliberately, like someone was turning her. The old woman's face twisted in shock. Child, what are you? Adana's legs moved on their own, one step, then another. Her lips curled into a smile, but she wasn't the one smiling. Inside her head, she was screaming, Stop! Stop moving! But her body wasn't listening. Her feet turned, guiding her away from the old woman, away from the empty shop, back toward the street. Her own voice slipped from her lips, but it wasn't really her. We are not done yet. Adana's heart plummeted because she hadn't thought those words, hadn't spoken them, and yet her mouth had moved. Something else was inside her, something that wasn't going to let her go. Adana's feet moved without permission, weaving through the city streets. She could feel people staring, some out of curiosity, others out of concern. She wanted to stop, but her body wouldn't let her. Then her hand shot out. She grabbed a stranger, a man in a suit, by his tie. He choked, stumbling back. "Madam, what's wrong with you?" he gasped. Adana's fingers tightened, and nails dug into his neck. "No, no, no, let go," she screamed inside her head, but her lips parted and she laughed. A cold, eerie giggle that wasn't hers. The man shoved her off, panting. "Are you mad?" Others stopped to stare. Whispers floated around her. "Who is she? She must be on drugs. Is she okay?" Adana staggered back, breathing hard. She tried to run, but her legs locked. And then her head snapped upward, her golden hair billowing around her. Her lips moved again, but the voice that came out was not her own. "Don't fight me, Adana." The whispers weren't in her head anymore. They were speaking through her. A sharp, piercing pain shot through her scalp. She screamed, and the crowd scattered. People ran, grabbing their children, their bags, fleeing as if they had just witnessed something unholy. Adana collapsed onto her knees, gasping for air. Tears burned down her cheeks. She needed help, and fast. But who would believe her now? The pain in her scalp was excruciating, like claws digging into her skull. She tried to scream again, but darkness swallowed her whole. When she woke up, everything was wrong. Her body lay on something soft. She blinked, trying to focus. A velvet couch, a faint perfume in the air, dim lights, golden curtains, a large ornate mirror across the room. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't at home. She wasn't on the street. She was somewhere else. Somewhere too elegant, too strange. Her fingers trembled as she pushed herself up. "Where am I?" A voice answered from the shadows. "You came back to me after all." Adana's blood turned to ice. A figure stepped forward, graceful, tall, familiar. Madame Ose. She stood there, smiling, like she had been waiting. Adana's chest tightened. "What did you do to me?" Madame Ose tilted her head, her eyes glinting. "I didn't do anything, my dear. You chose this." Adana's stomach churned. "Chose what?" Madame Ose's smile widened. She lifted a hand and pointed at the mirror. "Look." Adana's heart pounded. She turned slowly, and when she saw her reflection, she screamed. Adana's breath itched. Her reflection stared back, but her hair was no longer just hair. It shifted like golden serpents, slithering around her face. She jerked back, heart racing. "Make it stop!" Madame Ose sighed, stepping closer. "There is only one way out, my dear." Adana's head snapped toward her. "What do you mean?" Madame Ose's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Beauty always has a price. You wanted to shine, didn't you? Now you must decide." She leaned in. "To keep the beauty or to give it all up?" Adana's hands shook. "I don't care about beauty anymore. Just take it off." Madame Ose chuckled. "Not so fast. There is a condition." Adana's stomach tightened. "What condition?" Madame Ose's eyes gleamed. "You must pass it on." Adana froze. "Pass it on? To who?" Madame Ose's smile widened. "Anyone. A friend, a stranger, a little girl admiring your hair. Convince them to wear it, and you are free." Adana's blood ran cold. This was never about her. This was a curse that had to keep spreading. Her fingers dug into her arms. "And if I refuse?" Madame Ose's smile vanished. "Then you keep it until it consumes you completely." A shiver ran down Adana's spine. She thought of all the people who had admired her hair, her colleagues, her friends, that little girl at the supermarket. Could she really do this to someone else? Her time was running out. She had to choose. Adana's throat tightened. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Pass it on, and I'm free. The idea horrified her, but the alternative, keeping it, letting it take over her completely. Her fingers curled into fists. I can't do this to someone else. But could she survive if she didn't? Her thoughts spun like a storm. Then, a knock on the door. She jumped. A soft voice floated through. Madam Ose, are you in? I came for my hair appointment. Adana's breath caught. A woman's voice. Young, innocent. Madam Ose smirked. Perfect timing. She gestured towards the door. Your chance has arrived. Adana's stomach twisted. The doorknob turned. A woman stepped in, smiling. Good afternoon. I saw the golden hair on your client last time and I knew I had to have it. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at Adana. Oh wow, it's even more beautiful up close. Adana felt sick. Her scalp burned. The hair seemed to react like it wanted to jump onto this new host. Madam Ose's voice whispered in her ear. One word, Adana. Tell her it suits her and you walk free. Adana's breast shook, her lips parted. Could she really do this? Adana's chest tightened. The woman's eager smile burned into her mind. Oh wow, it's even more beautiful up close. Her stomach twisted. She couldn't do this. She couldn't doom someone else to this horror. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She bolted. Madam Ose's laugh rang out behind her. Running won't save you, dear. Adana didn't look back. She tore through the hallway, bursting out the door into the street. Night air hit her skin, cool but stifling. Her pulse pounded as she ran, past staring pedestrians, past honking cars, past bright city lights. She didn't stop, not until she reached a dark, quiet corner of the city. Her legs finally gave out. She collapsed onto a bench, her breath coming in shaky gasps. The golden strands of hair clung to her, whispering against her ears like snakes hissing. She grabbed her head, shaking violently. Leave me alone! But the hair tightened, almost like it was angry. Tears burned in her eyes. She couldn't go home. She couldn't face anyone. She was trapped and she was alone. Days blurred together. She drifted through the city, avoiding everyone. She barely ate. She barely spoke. Whenever she passed a mirror, she turned away. Her reflection wasn't hers anymore. At night, she had whispers. Give us another. Let us be free. She called into herself, shaking. Her body felt weaker every day. Her skin pale. Her mind fraying. She was fading and she knew she wouldn't last much longer. One evening, as she sat coiled against an old building, a shadow loomed over her. Sister, are you alright? A gentle voice. Adana looked up. A woman in a long white dress stood before her, holding a Bible. Her face was kind, but her eyes held something deeper, understanding. Like she knew, like she had seen this before. Adana's lips quivered. Please, she whispered, help me. The woman knelt beside her, her voice calm but firm. Come with me. I know someone who can set you free. Adana's heart pounded. Was this real or was it another trap? She hesitated, but then the whispers returned, hissing in her ears. Your time is running out. She shuddered. She had no choice. With the last of her strength, she took the woman's hand and let herself be led into the unknown. Adana followed the woman through winding streets. Her body felt heavy. Her head throbbed. The golden strands tightened around her scalp like they knew what was coming. Soon, they reached a small building, a church tucked between towering city structures. The woman led her inside. Candlelight flickered. A few people sat in silence, their heads bowed. At the altar stood a man in a white robe. He turned as they entered, his eyes piercing as they landed on Adana. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, "It has already begun." The woman guided Adana to the front. Sit, my dear. Adana sank onto the wooden bench. Her skin crawled. The whispers in her head turned to screams. Don't, don't, don't. The man raised a small bottle. holy oil, he murmured, pouring a drop onto her forehead. The moment it touched her skin, the room exploded in chaos. Adana screamed. The golden strands lashed out, twisting like writhing snakes. They shot towards the priest, aiming for his throat, but the moment they touched his robe, they burned. A hideous shriek echoed through the room. Adana clutched her head, writhing. "Make it stop!" The priest's voice rose in command. "You have no power here. Release her!" The hair snapped and twisted, pulling tighter around Adana's scalp. Blood trickled down her forehead. The strands squirmed like a creature in pain. The woman beside her began to pray. "This is not your vessel. Let her go." Adana's body convulsed. The air grew thick. Darkness swelled, pressing in from all sides. And then a voice, low, cold and inhuman, rose from the shadows. She made a deal. She wanted beauty. She must pay the price. The priest didn't flinch. "She has repented. She belongs to the Lord." Adana's vision blurred. Her body felt like it was being torn apart. Then, a blinding flash of light. The golden strands erupted into flames. A horrific screech split the air, and then silence. Adana collapsed. Her hair burned away. She gasped, touching her scalp. For the first time in weeks, it was hers again. Tears spilled down her face. "It's gone." The priest nodded. "You are free." Adana sat in the quiet church, breathing shakily. The weight on her soul was gone, but deep inside, one thought lingered. How many others are trapped in this curse? She turned to the woman. "That thing said I made a deal, but I didn't." The woman's face was grim. Sometimes the enemy disguises a trap as a blessing. Adana's chest tightened. She thought of all the women desperate for beauty, for perfection, for something that would make them stand out, and she shivered because she now knew the truth. Some prices are too high to pay.